Today might actually be the last Sony FX6 rig build video that I'm ever gonna make. And to be honest, I'm okay with it because I think I found my favorite setup. Today's going to be about the Kondor Blue Sony FX6 rig build. This actually might be the last video that I'm going to have on this topic. However, there is going to be one quirk with this setup, and there is one question I have to ask you guys by the end of this video. But let's just get started. Now, like I always say, every kiss begins with K, and that means we're also gonna have to take off all the handles that are on this camera. The side handle is gonna have to come off, so is the monitor, and there is one other thing that's gonna have to come off this camera as well. That thing, which I know, it's annoying. We'll talk about it later. Now, the top side of this setup is gonna be separated by 3 individual plates, and the first one you're actually gonna do is gonna be the middle. Now, this actually does have a NATO rail that's going to be on either side and a bunch of mounting points as well, and it's also gonna be really functional to get your top handle that's gonna be on there, which is my favorite part. Now, all you have to do is just put this on the top of your camera. That's gonna take the place of the screws on top, and as well, it's also going to cover up the port that's gonna be left open when you take off the audio top handle that comes with your camera. Now, on your left side plate, you're gonna have this guy, and obviously it has a bunch of mounting points on it as well, but you do have a couple things going for it. For one, you have a little secret compartment where you could put in a little Allen key just in case you actually lose your multi-tool. And number 2 is you actually have this little mounting point on the side as well, because Kondor Blue decided that's where your monitor is going to go. So you could always just use that, and it actually fits perfectly with the monitor for the Sony FX6. Now, something you're going to notice with both of these side plates is this little screw thing that's on the top here. Now, there is going to be little caps we're going to put on these as well when we're done, and that's really important to get your battery plate on that we'll get a little bit later. Now, before we get on our right side plate, I'm actually gonna put the top handle on first. The reason being, in my experience, and this is probably because I have a prototype of this rig, but it's a little bit harder for me to get this on the left side. So I'm gonna get it on the right when there's no other plate that's gonna be in the way. Now, with this top plate, it's actually great because it does fit my entire hand, and I kind of complain on this channel a couple times that I have really big hands, and this actually fits just fine. Now, what's unique about this guy, especially because you've got to put your monitor somewhere, is you could actually put this in 3 different ways. One, you have a little rod mount that's going to be on the top over here. You have a cold shoe as well, and you have a 5/8 screw mount as well if you want to use that option. So you have a bunch of different ways, depending if you have other monitor mounts that you can use with this top handle, and you're not necessarily shoehorned to just using Kondor Blues. On top of that, you also have 4 mounting points on here as well for other accessories, but one thing that I really do like is that there is a recording button on the top handle itself, and all you have to do is just connect a cable into the remote port into your camera itself, and you still have the control of pressing record or stopping recording whenever you feel like it. Now, for our right side plate, obviously you're going to have more mounting points. However, it does have this little L plate that's on the side. That way I could actually mount on other accessories that would be more suited for the side of the camera. Now, this is where I'm going to use things like a wireless transmitter to make sure it's mounted on my camera securely, because there isn't just one, there's like 5 different mounting points you could put on here, so depending on what you're going to use, you actually have those options available to you. There's also a little bubble level on here to make sure you can tell things are straight. However, there is one on the camera's monitor, but if you're not using the monitor, well, you have this guy for you instead. Now, this is where we're at with the rig build so far, and as I mentioned before, there are little inputs that you could actually get on a V-mount battery plate to this. Now, this is actually something that's really going to be cool. Now, I could put on the V-mount battery plate that's going to be on here, and it's gonna fit just the way that it is, and I'll probably have a B-roll clip of me putting this on properly. However, you're gonna be able to do something unique with this plate versus something else that I've used before. Now, once you've screwed on this plate and everything is tightly secure, you can actually use this cable over here that's not only gonna connect from the D-tap, but it's also gonna go to the power source of your camera. The reason why this is gonna be cool is because you can also open and you can close this hatch as well, so you can hot swap out the battery that's already in your camera, and you can change your V-mount battery while you're on the fly. Now, one of the concerns that people have with their batteries that if it dies, you actually might lose a clip that you're shooting, and if you can't get that back, it's a big issue. However, when you have technically 2 batteries working at the same time, if you are going to hot swap your batteries, you could always either just open up the door and change the battery inside, or you could change the V-mount battery that's already in this plate. Oh, it's also cool that there's D-tap and other power outputs as well, so if you have other accessories that use 12 volt, 5 volt, or just D-tap like I do, you have the plate that could do that, and you also have the D-tap input in your battery. Now, like I mentioned before, there are 3 different ways you can mount on a monitor to your camera. You can either use the rod system, you could use this 5/8 screw, or you could use a cold shoe. Now, in my experience, I kind of like having my monitor mount screwed in, so I am going to use the Kondor Blue monitor mount that's going to go on this top handle. Now, I feel like I've kind of beaten this with a dead horse, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I love using the Atomos Ninja 5. It gives me a lot of options. I love the fact that I could shoot in ProRes RAW. Now, what is going to be a little bit different is that you could actually use a NATO rail to get your monitor on this mount. So what I'm going to have to do is put a plate at the bottom of my Atomos Ninja 5, and I could just slide that in, which I find a lot more secure than actually screwing into the quarter 20 thread. The reason why is because as you start to move the camera around on the day, things start to move around a little bit and your monitor gets loose and sometimes it actually falls off, which has happened before, and I don't like it any more than you do. This actually doesn't look like much, but it is going to be my favorite part. And the reason why is because you get a choice between whether or not you want to put this on a tripod, or you want to use a 15mm rod system, or you just want to do both of those things at the same time. Now, the base plate for this guy actually comes off of this system fairly easily. There's a little knob on the side here. I just have to take that part off, slides out, and this is going to go on the bottom of my camera. Now there is a dovetail release on the opposite side, and all you really have to do is just undo that little release part, and you can slide off the 15mm rod side and the dovetail. Now this is actually going to go on a tripod, and generally speaking it's going to stay there. The reason for a dovetail is to actually make it a little bit more convenient for you to actually get your camera with the entire setup on there, instead of having to deal with this little plate that's there all the time. So what I've actually done is I've put my Manfrotto 502 plate that's going to go on the bottom of the dovetail. This is going to live on the tripod, and whenever I need it on sticks, I could always use it for that. And whenever I need this guy for anything like follow focusing systems or different types of matte boxes, I always have this available to me. Now if you haven't noticed, a lot of the parts for this rig build is very visually heavy. Because there is an audio top handle, a lot of things are going to have to do with the image, and we'll talk about audio a little bit later. However, there is one thing that's going to go with this, and it's going to be my wireless transmission. Now I do use the Hollyland Mars 4K, and I have been using it for almost a year now, and this is actually great not only to pull focus from, it does have a decent latency, but it's also great just to make sure that your clients don't breathe over your shoulder. Now this looks like a pretty substantial rig, and it's actually probably ready to go and shoot. Well, that's where you're wrong, because you don't look cool and you're not a cool cinematographer unless you have a matte box. And that's why we're going to use the NISI C5 FILMMAKER setup. I'm obviously just kidding about the cool thing. However, this is actually a great piece of kit to add to your camera, whether you're using the FX6 or otherwise. Now, the Sony FX6 only does have 7 stops of ND, so you don't necessarily get as much as you would some other cameras that have built-in ND filters. But the C5 actually has an ND filter on the front that goes from 1 to 5 stops to give you a little bit extra just in case you need it. On top of that, you could also fit in these 4x5 filters, and I'm actually going to be using the NISI Allure 1/8, which is a bit of a mist filter, but it also gives a little bit halation and something that I enjoy using. Now, what's cool about this, guys, that all you have to do is just take off the clamp that goes on the back of this matte box, put it on the front of your lens, which is going to be my 35mm G Master lens, and that's actually going to complete this entire kit. Now, something I get made fun of about is the fact that I have a Canadian accent, but outside of that, I also get made fun of the fact that my cable management kind of sucks, and that's actually why I bought a pack of Mondo Bites. Now, these actually screw into the quarter 20 thread mounts that are on the side plates of your camera build, and the main function for them is to organize your cables. When you're plugging in things like HDMI cables and SDI cables and different things for DTAP and all other sorts of stuff, what ends up happening is sometimes the cables get a little bit mixed up and tangled. However, you just gotta grab a couple of your Mondo Bites, you actually stick it in your camera rig build, but this actually goes into a quarter 20 thread, and all you have to do is just fish your cables through here and everything's a lot more organized. And our Mondo kind of gave them to me, so thank you. Actually, no, he didn't. Now, this is going to be the Sony FX rig build in its entirety with all the accessories that I would use for handheld shooting. Now, there's a couple of things that we have to get through just to cap off this video. Now, first of all the links for everything is going to be in the description down below. Now, I actually don't even know if I have affiliate links for Kondor Blue, so I have no idea if I make money back on this whatsoever, and that's beside the point. I just want to make something really cool, and this is probably the favorite setup I'm going to use for more visual heavy handheld shooting. And number 2, and you've probably wondered this from the beginning of the video, is I took off this guy to start off with, and this is the audio top handle that you need to get any sort of professional sound. Now, I'd love to tell you there's some magic solution to fix that, but there absolutely isn't. I only have the scratch mic that's on the camera body itself. However, this comes to the question that I have for you guys. What would be an audio solution to something where if you lost or you broke this top handle? Whoever actually makes something where I could sync up audio, but I could still have a setup that feels a lot more sturdy and more friendly for handheld shooting. And to be honest, whichever one gets the most likes, I'm probably going to end up buying. That being said, this is my last rig build video for the Sony FX6. That doesn't discount any other cameras that I may get in the future. However, for the Sony FX6, I've pretty much gotten every single configuration I could think of, and actually I'm pretty happy with this one. But then again, leave a comment down below what you think would be a decent audio solution, and I'll see you guys in the next one, and probably tomorrow, actually. Peace.